As Vienna bureau chief for the Associated Press, Alison Smale was well positioned when the Berlin Wall came down on November 9, 1989. Smale had covered European and Soviet affairs for AP since 1981, first in Bonn and then in Moscow. With the Vienna posting in 1986, she acquired a wider territory, as the city remained a key listening post for news from behind the Iron Curtain. Smale was a child when the communist regime of East Germany divided Berlin with a barricade of concrete, iron, and barbed wire in an effort to halt the flow of refugees to the west. Completed on August 13, 1961, the wall was manned continuously by armed guards with orders to shoot anyone attempting to cross. It is estimated that there were 136 deaths at the wall over the 28 years of its existence, and yet, for anyone born under communism, life without the wall was unthinkable. The cracking of the wall began far from Berlin during the spring of 1989 in the rolling green countryside along the Austria-Hungary border. In May, to the amazement of almost everyone, Communist Hungary began taking down part of its border with Austria. Then, in August, members of Hungary's budding opposition organized a picnic at the border to press for greater political freedom. Some 600 East Germans got word of the event and turned up among the estimated 10,000 participants. They had a plan to take advantage of an excursion across the border to escape to Austria. The bold decision of Hungarian border guard Lieutenant Colonel Arpad Bella not to stop them as they pushed through the gates at Sopron-Puca was pivotal, as there were still 80,000 Soviet troops in Hungary. Risking his job, Bella simply stood aside as the East Germans abandoned their cars and personal possessions to make the short walk to a new life in the West. It was an incredible experience for them, he recalled in 2009. They embraced, they kissed, they cried, and laughed in their joy. Very soon, thousands of East Germans realized that the Hungarians had opened an easier route to West Germany and began escaping over the fields to Austria. Thousands of others took refuge in the West German embassies in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Poland, pressuring West Germany to find a way out for them, too. Hungary, surprising everyone again, said on September 10 that no one needed to sneak across the fields anymore. They could simply drive across the border, or walk. At this news, West Germany's embassy in Budapest emptied, and East Germany responded by restricting travel to Hungary. With popular discontent building in East Germany, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, the man who encouraged the Hungarians in the first place, traveled to East Berlin on October 6. AP staff from Moscow, Bonn, and East Berlin converged to cover him. The story quickly became an international one, with staff from London, Stockholm, Amsterdam, Geneva, and New York taking part. East German leader Erich Honecker was ousted October 18. Responding to tremendous public pressure, Honecker's successor Egon Krenz promised freer travel on October 27, proposed a new travel law on November 6, and saw it rejected the next day. The same day, East Germany's ministers resigned under growing public pressure for reform. On November 8, East Germany's Communist Politburo resigned, and a day later, officials announced that for the first time in East German history, people could go where they wanted, even to West Berlin, through the Berlin Wall. Alison Smale was following events closely from Vienna when the Politburo resigned. She left Vienna immediately, arriving the night of November 8. With her was Vienna colleague George Jahn, who had grown up in Communist Hungary. For him and for his generation, the unthinkable was about to happen. The wall, which had seemed as normal as the rising sun, was about to come down. Inside the Berlin bureau the next day, Frieda Reimold and Nesha Starchevich were monitoring West German television when Günter Schabowski, the East German Politburo spokesman, called a press conference to clarify the new travel regulations. When a reporter asked him when East German citizens could begin to take advantage of the new rules, Schabowski responded, "Ab jetzt," meaning from now on. Reimold flashed the news to AP's German-language news service. East Germany opens border. Starchevich telephoned Frankfurt, which filed the worldwide bulletin in English. Smale recalls it all vividly.
And we're watching on television, and it's really very boring. And then all of a sudden, right at the end, he says his famous sentence, which we now know was all the mistake. I mean, it was a complete misunderstanding, that he should never have read it out at that time, and he should never have said it took effect immediately. And it was just stunning. And that's how the Berlin Wall fell. Then West German television said, yeah, and we hear that wir hören, dass es auch schon am Checkpoint Charlie geht. We hear it's already possible at Checkpoint Charlie. I said, Checkpoint Charlie? Jesus, I mean, you know, that's the symbol. So we raced there in a car, and we got there just as the first East Berliners were arriving as well. And it was very clear that the border guards had absolutely no orders. They didn't know what to do. And they sort of shoved me into this narrow little corridor. And somehow, this East German woman squeezed in with me. And I remember she went, yeah, like this. And we went to the pimply youth at the other end of the corridor who was checking passports, and he looked at my passport, and then he looked at her papers. And she somehow had a permission to visit the West, but not until the 17th of November. So this guy says, but, you know, it's only valid on the 17th of November. And I said, schauen Sie sich doch man, look around you. History is changing everything. Who cares whether it's the 9th of November or the 17th of November? And he shrugged and pressed the button to open the door. And that's how I think, anyway, I crossed Checkpoint Charlie with the first East German to cross that night. Again, by a mistake, really. And I remember it was the only time in my life where I pinched myself to check that I was really where I was.